Welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday. So in the continuing series on Bunkai, or how to look at kata for realistic applications, the next step, after last week discussing kind of the over-interpretation of every single little nuance of every move and trying to make it a fighting move, today I want to look at the middle, or the beginning of a movement. So where a movement starts and what happens in the middle is actually where a lot of the real fighting applications occur. We so often look at the end point, the punch. Like last week I mentioned that a lot of Okinawans, when you see the master punch, he'll punch and then there's a slight relax and the hand will open here, and then he'll drop in and it'll open and he'll drop in. Well, it's that little opening, which is sort of I don't want to say a secret, but a clue to what's really going on. A lot of what look like punches at the end point are actually coming out and grabbing or getting a hold, or my opponent pulling me and me reversing that hold on him. So it's what happens in the middle that is more often than not the real application, and the completion of the movement is what we see as a follow-through. We talked about that way back in the early sessions, back on, I don't know, number 4 and 5, I think it was, where I was talking about stances and footwork. When we end in a stance, that's not really a stopping point. That's the follow-through finish of applying my body. So I'm coming forward with my punch and I put my whole body into it. Or I'm starting there as a way to move in and to do the next movement. So the stance is not static. It shows us the beginning or the middle of a movement more really than the end. And the same is true of our strikes. Now, 2 perfect examples of this are Seisan at the end, where we go here, and then you'll see different hand configurations of pressing. If we look at just the end, we could call that a palm heel strike or a spear hand poke, right? Which we also see in Goju Shiho with our spear hands. If we look at just the end position, it's a spear hand. But if we look at what's happening in the middle, that tells us what more likely is really occurring is that somebody has kicked me and I break their foot. So this is just the follow through, the finished position of what's actually happened. Or in a worst case scenario, I come back and he's tried to tackle me, chop him in the head, and we do this with the head, which has dire consequences for my opponent. So the middle of the movement, the prep, is where the actual movement takes place. We see the same thing when we come to our cup and saucer, or our stacked hand position, or our sword hand position. There are various variations. We have stacked here, we have one down, one vertical, we have them separate, we have them stacked this way. Whatever particular style does theirs differently. In Seidokan, we tend to be more stacked fist than here, but I've seen both. I've seen it both ways. So it's not really this that's the end point, okay? As we're doing our movements, which I mentioned in Pasai, I've grabbed the individual and pushed and thrown him, okay? You see this in Kung Fu systems. We see this in the Mawashi Uke, the circular blocking of Sanchin Kata. So we have those movements quite a bit throughout, and they're more to do with how I've, Naihanchi, for example, I hit the guy, I elbow him, I pull his head over here, I punch him, and then with his head, okay? So it's the middle or the preparation that actually is the move. We do knife hand block. We look at the end point as the knife hand. What is this doing? What about this version? In Goju Shiho, when we do this, I get his head, boom! If that didn't do it, get him again. So it's the middle where I'm manipulating a joint, an elbow, coming up under, popping an elbow here. That is an important part, and probably, if I'm being honest, the most deadly applications happen from looking at the middle point of a movement. An extension of that is just basic punching, which if you go back to the video on punching, we start here and I drive with my hip. My fist hasn't moved that much. My elbow's barely at my ribs. That's already a punch. and then I continue forward, that's a punch. And then I finish forward, that's the follow through of maybe a 3/4 position, as some systems teach it. If I'm only thinking of the end point of the punch, I can't really go through. If I do, either I'm rotating too soon and pushing with my elbow out in order to follow through, or I'm full punching and saving that twist for the end, but I don't even make contact. So that the punch really, if you think about it logically, has to have occurred somewhere before, and that rotation which I've begun simply follows through as we finish the technique. So in your interpretation of kata, don't look just at the end point. Look at how the preparation happens in the middle, which again is why I said early on, economy of motion. If I'm over preparing, then I lose the potential of a block. If I get ready for my shuto-uke way back here, I'm already hitting the head. But if I get ready, so if I do that from the side, if I get ready way back here, you can see my head is open to the punch. But if I get ready here, and I haven't exaggerated that too much, then that's my block. That's my trap. This is my hit. Okay? And this indicates that the elbow is what I'm trapping on my opponent. So the middle point of a movement, that's the secret. That's where the benefit of the over-interpretation that I did last week kind of comes into play, because if I'm using every portion and then isolate the middle, I've probably found something very useful. And that's consistent with what the old Okinawan masters taught in the applications in their bunkai. So just one more little hint, a way to look at how to interpret your kata movements. I hope it's helpful. Have fun playing around with it, explore, but remember, always within the parameters of realistic, that you can pressure test against a resisting opponent. If it doesn't work then, it won't work anywhere. Thanks again for joining. Until next Saturday, keep practicing.